Hello everybody, my name is Neil and I'm the founder of my website, which is IELTSwheel.com. And today we will be analyzing writing task 1 taken from Cambridge Book 15. Let's read and analyze this task in detail. The diagram below shows how instant noodles are manufactured. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, so here we've got several stages of manufacturing instant noodles, and we have to describe all of these stages in detail. Okay, so what kind of keywords can we use here? For example, we can say that we see the illustration, right? It's not a bar graph, it's not a line graph, it's illustration. Next, here you can be very specific. You can count the number of stages, okay, or the number of the stages presented here, and then you can indicate this. You can just say the 8 stages of something. Okay, then you can also mention something like the initial stage, okay, which means that we're talking about the very first stage. Stage here means level. Next, as soon as all of the elements have been thoroughly mixed, it is then rolled in. Okay, so use the phrase as soon as or once, which basically means when all of the elements have been thoroughly mixed. I'm using the present perfect here and using the passive voice. It is then rolled in. So then, here is referring to the next step of the process. Following this here means after this, but you don't want to write after this because it's less formal. You want to write following this. Next, in the next process, and then prior to, which means before something. This is followed by, which means the next step is. Once this process has been completed, so in this case once means as soon as this process has been completed. I'm using the present perfect and the passive voice here. Subsequently here means after this. Okay, and when you're describing the process of something, make sure to use the passive voice. That's exactly what the examiner wants to see. So what is the formula? The formula is object plus to be, is are, plus past participle, which basically means verb 3 or verb ed. So for example, do, did, done, or make, made, made. Okay, or use the present perfect, have, has, been, plus past participle. Okay, so now let's get started. Let's look at our diagram one more time. Okay, and let me show you the first sentence and then I'll explain everything in detail. Okay, here we go. So, the illustration displays the 8 stages of instant noodle production. Okay, so instead of writing the diagram, okay, I have Paraphase and I've written the illustration. Okay, next, displays, which basically means shows the 8 stages of, because here we've got 8 stages. So the 8 stages, because we know what kind of stages we're talking about, of instant noodle production. Okay, so this is our introduction. Now let's just focus on the body paragraph. So okay, first of all, let's just look at our diagram again. Just look at the first stage carefully. Okay, and I'll show you how to describe the first stage. Okay, at the at the initial stage, a truck transports flour from storage silos to a manufacturing area where two more elements are added, namely water and oil in a large mixer. Okay, so here I'm using the phrase in the initial stage, which basically means at the very beginning of the process. A truck transports flour from storage silos. Just look at this carefully. So here we have a truck which transports what? Flour from where? From storage silos, and then where? We have to indicate the destination. So here, to a manufacturing area where two more elements are added. If you look at this carefully, we have water and oil, right? And then we have a mixer, okay? And therefore, I'm being very specific here. So where two more elements are added, and here, namely means now I want to be more specific. I want to provide the exact information, water and oil, where in a large mixer. Okay, so remember, you need to use the word namely, not named, but namely. And it's very important to use a comma here. All right, now look at the diagram one more time. Okay, and I'll show you the next sentence. Okay. Next. As soon as all of the elements have been thoroughly mixed, it is then rolled in the form of dough sheets, which are then rolled into a second machine which cuts the dough sheets into strips. Okay, now let's just look at the sentence. As soon as all of the elements have been thoroughly mixed. Thoroughly means entirely, completely mixed. It's obvious that there is a mixer, and what does the mixer do? It mixes all of the elements, okay? So in this case, we've got three elements: flour, water, and oil, okay? So, and we have mentioned this. Next, it is then rolled in the form of dough sheets, okay? Now, look at this carefully. We have dough sheets and we have rollers. So we have a noun, okay? And the verb would be roll, which are then rolled into a second machine, which cuts the dough sheets into strips. Look at this carefully. Okay, here we have dough strips, which we have just described. Now, pay attention to this part, which cuts the dough sheets, because we have already mentioned dough sheets here, and we're talking about these those sheets again, and therefore we need to use the definite article those sheets into strips. Okay, and remember, roll into something. Okay, next, now let's just look at this diagram again, and we'll be focusing on the next step. So here we have noodles discs. Okay, now how can we do this? How can we describe it? Let me show you. Okay, following this, they are then converted into discs. Okay, so following this here means after this. They are then, okay, so as you can see, I've used the word then in the middle of the sentence. They are then converted into. So when you convert into something, that means you make, you change something to something. So converted into discs. Now look at this carefully. We have noodle discs, okay? And that's exactly what we have just done. All right. Now, let's just look at the next step of the process. Number 6, look at this carefully. So we have cooking oil plus drying. Okay, so how can we write this sentence? Okay, in the next process, oil is added to the discs, which are then dried prior to their being pressed into cups. Okay. In the next process, oil is added to the discs. Now look at this carefully. We have cooking oil, okay, and before we have mentioned the discs. So here, and then plus drying, okay. So therefore, that then converted into discs. Okay, here in the next process, oil is added to the discs. Because we have mentioned discs once, we're talking about the discs one more time, and therefore it's important to use the here, which are then dried prior to, which basically means before they are being pressed, which means before they are pressed into cups. Look at this carefully. We have cups, okay, and that's what we have just described. Now let's just look at the next step. So here we have vegetables and spices. Okay. Now, a variety of vegetables and spices are added as required. Okay, so in this case, a variety of means different vegetables and spices are added as required. As required means as necessary. Now look at this carefully. We have vegetables, we have spices, okay, and we are using this sentence, okay, to indicate this process, are added as required. Okay, now let's just look at the next step. So here we have labeling and sealing and everything. Okay, now how can we describe the next sentence, the next process? Once this process has been completed, they are moved by means of a conveyor belt in 2 rows and are subsequently available for dispatch to supermarkets and shops. That's it. So once this process has been completed, okay, which means before we describe a variety of vegetables and spices are added as required. Okay, so once this process, which means as soon as this process has been completed, I'm using the passive voice here plus the present perfect, they are moved by means of a conveyor belt in 2 rows. Look at this carefully. We have 2 rows and they are moved, okay, and are subsequently, which means later, available for dispatch to supermarkets and shops. So guys, we have described all of the stages given here, okay, in detail. All right, I hope that you have learned how to describe a process. I hope you've learned how to use some linking devices. Also, you've learned how to use the passive voice correctly in order to impress the examiner. If you want to improve your writing, if you want to get your essays, letters, or graphs analyzed and checked and evaluated thoroughly, you can visit my website, which is IELTSWheel.com. You can also purchase advanced video courses to prepare for the IELTS exam, or you can get my help. I can teach you individually and in small groups, and this will definitely help you to maximize your IELTS score. Thank you very much for watching and analyzing this video lesson.